Marcel. So thank you for attending this press conference. I'd planned to stay away a bit longer, but my friends in the Kaieteur News, they miss me. So I've decided to come back to these press conferences. The elections are over. The PPP won those elections, for those who don't realize that as yet. Many of them are in the opposition and some are in the media, and they believe we're still campaigning. And we're not. We're focused entirely on fulfilling the agenda that we promised the people of Guyana. And so for the past month, we've been engaged in serious work to fulfill that agenda. Can they give me some coffee and water too here? So, and some water too. So that's what we've been doing in the past month. The President has spoken several times about some of the work that we're doing. Thank you. And he has outlined clearly what are some of his priorities. Those are not new because we spoke of them extensively on the campaign and they're part of our manifesto. So we are now going to be caught up on a daily basis with the campaign that the opposition is still waging, and that many in the media who are hostile to us and would never support us on any issue, we're not going to be paying attention to them. Today, I want to focus a bit on some of the issues that we'll be working on. I just have to, notice I shouldn't have started as yet because I'm expecting a call to come through, and so I may have to just break for a minute and then come back to the press conference. So yes, I will be focusing on some of the issues that we promised in the campaign and how we've advanced these. But before I do so, I saw this vile editorial in the Stabroek News. And I thought it was necessary, notwithstanding what I said, to address this issue. Now, the Stabroek News has, if you have a chance to read this editorial, it says elections 9,161. And basically what it says here is that 195,969 persons voted against President Ali's One Guyana policy, because this is the number of votes that the opposition got. And that basically the One Guyana policy is a failure. And they concluded that Guyana remains a deeply divided polity, and that the unity which is engendered in the President's One Guyana message is far from being achieved. So what will the president do in this, his final term? And I think their biggest nightmare, as I said before, is that our people are united. And if their expectation was that we'll get 100% of the votes, well, we fell short of it. We did not speak of a 2/3 majority that they're speaking of here. We said we'll win the elections, and we'll win the elections handsomely with a big margin. We won the elections with a huge margin of over 46,000 votes more than the combined opposition. All 5 political parties combined that were contesting against us. We won those elections with a 7-seat majority in the parliament when we had 1-seat majority in the last elections. For us, that's a landslide. For this country, that's a landslide. And we, in Region 4, the last elections, the combined opposition had 40,237 votes more than the PPP. In these elections, they had 5,720 votes more than the PPP, the combined opposition, all 5 parties. That means in this region alone, we've reduced the net difference by 34,517 votes. If they didn't see that as a major inroad into opposition strongholds, where in South Georgetown, we got 1 of every 4 voters voting PPP. In North Georgetown, we got 43% of the votes. That's of the combined opposition. That's nearly 2 of every 4 persons voted PPP. On the East Coast, we moved from 54% of the people voting in the last elections for the PPP to 60%. On the East Bank, it moved up from 49% to 54%, nearly 55%. In Region 4, we had a massive turnaround. And this is the stronghold of APNU. They ignored all of this. They ignored the 7 seats majority. They ignored the 46,000 votes more that we got than the combined opposition. And they're saying that people rejected President Ali's one Guyana policy. This could only come from people who were arguing that we were going to be a minority government. Starbuck News, the AFC, Nigel Hughes, Timothy Jonas, with the Win Party, almost everyone in the opposition was saying the PPP will be a minority government. They forgot all about that. The same people, and now they've gone on to the new agenda. They said, we'll be a minority government. Well, we're not a minority government. In fact, we came out of the elections with a landslide. Massive electoral victory. And so these are the same people who lied to the population of Guyana to say that this would happen, who were enabling the opposition. The Starbuck News and the others were opposition newspapers. Until now, they carry the entire opposition narrative. People like Patterson now is a star in the Starbuck News and Kaieteur News. Who cares about what Patterson says? The people of Guyana showed that they didn't care. What he says, what Nigel Hughes or any of the others, all of the leaders of the AFC, they rejected them. They didn't even get votes to get a single seat in the parliament. Why should we be paying attention to all of these people when the population, the voters rejected them? The voters felt that they're useless. They had nothing to offer the people of the country. But when you look at the newspapers, you would think that they are the leading voices of Guyana. The voters have spoken already. The people of Guyana have spoken. We're not going to relitigate this issue or act as though we're still campaigning. We have now a mandate given to us by the people of Guyana, and we are going to deliver on that mandate. And we said to the people of the country what we will do, and we'll do exactly that. We're not going to be seeking Starbuck News blessings or the blessing of the GHRE or some one of the others, or Kaitio News. The voters have given the mandate to the PPP for the next 5 years. I saw this ridiculous thing from David Hines. So now in the parliament, we have a David Hines who believe that Indian people are a waste of time, total racist. You have another one, Terence Campbell, who believe that Indians are genetically prone to lying, and publicly. You have a third one, Amanza Walton, who believes that Indians are mentally lazy. These are the people we have in the parliament today. And he speaks about the autocracy now in the new government because parliament is not convened. Now there are constitutional provisions, and the constitution makes it clear the time period in which parliament has to be convened. And it says 4 months after the dissolution of the parliament. We're within the 4 months, and the parliament will be convened within the 4 months in keeping with our constitution. He's saying this is because of PPP's dominance of the parliament. It's a ridiculous, stupid thing to say. But when you have all of these mediocre people going to parliament now, it will be a really crazy situation in there. Because all day you'd be fighting off racism. You have to fight off racism or mediocrity. That is what we'll have now in that parliament. So the elections would be held, the next elections, in 2031. And that's when we will be seeing them again. These are the general and regional elections. Between this period, we will focus on, one, at the party level, strengthening the party. We're going to build out the women's movement to a strong, vibrant women's organization. Two, we're going to expand on the work that we've started with the young people through the Progressive Youth Organization. We have 15,000 members. We'll take that to 30,000 members. We'll prepare the party for that 2031. And every elections, they've counted the PPP out. They've always argued minority government because somehow they believe that the Indian population, which is a smaller share now of the Guyanese population, because that population has been reduced significantly, that the PPP will lose the elections because they can only use a racist kind of framework to analyze the voting intentions of the people and what motivates them. For them, it's only race that motivates people to vote. And so they always look at the demographics and say, oh, the PPP will be a minority government. A minority government. Look, the Indian population is dwindling. They're migrating. But we have defied them every single election. If the Indian population is now maybe 35% of Guyana. We won 55% of the votes because our party is national in nature, and it has made a dedicated effort to reach out to people across the political spectrum, across the racial spectrum, across the religious spectrum. We're a national party. And so this is what will happen in the parliament. We'd have to deal with a lot of these people who are going in there. They have nothing to offer the people of Guyana. And people will discover that soon, very soon, when they see the parliament. Look how pathetic it gets when PPP requesting mentorship from senior AFC officials. I see AFC now, nobody voted for them. They said the PPP members of parliament have asked them, the AFC, to mentor those members of parliament, or to be their mentors. To do what? To lose elections? You have a party that's winning elections, you're a member of parliament of the PPP, and you would ask a Patterson or a Ramjatan to mentor you. I'm sure they wouldn't call a single name, but it's just to get headlines, and they're in the papers every day. And then I saw, again, the fabrication. So Paul said they spent $300 million in the last elections, which is a lot of money, by the way. I thought APNU spent far less, given the mediocre performance and the campaign they had. And the PPP didn't spend very much more than that. But Dennis Chabral of the Demerara Wave said the PPP spent $5 billion. I don't know where he pulled that out, from some dark part of his body or somewhere else, but a figure of $5 billion, and he put it in a story. This is what we have for media in Guyana. How could you just speculate and put that in a story, a news story? And then they claim, I see all around, you would see them running around the world saying, oh, Irfan Ali doesn't treat them well, he doesn't smile with them. They're reporters in this country, and then they're fraudsters, and some of them just carry badges for reporting for newspapers and some of the online media houses. They are pure criminals, some of the people there. They have criminal past. I can point out quite a few of them who've had a criminal past, and they have nothing associated with a reporter. So you're going to hear them say the government is hostile to reporters again. I think we have to now spend time to expose these people to the international community. Not all opposition elements who wear the badge or carry the badge of a reporter or say they're a reporter suddenly becomes a reporter or a journalist. You have to have some standards. This is the sort of standard we have. So, and they expect the government to pander to that nonsense. The president has made it clear, we are going to protect people's individual freedoms. The PPP has a long track record of doing this, protecting freedom, the right to vote, freedom of assembly, freedom to speak freely without fear of intimidation from the government, press freedom. These are all things that are crucial to what we believe in. And we are going to promote greater freedoms for all of our people. Human rights, ensuring that our constitution protects every single Guyanese, ensuring that our courts are impartial, and that people can have legal recourse to any issue that they would be affected by, even if it's discrimination, that they fear discrimination from the government. And we have a long track record of doing that. But In doing so, we are not going to be kissing the ass of reporters who are hostile to us. Hostile to us, who are taking money. Some of them took money from the Mohammeds to run their campaign by calling themselves reporters. And then when the president speaks up against them, then they suddenly run off to the international bodies. If you listen to President Trump or many other leaders around the world, they speak about disinformation. This is a major thing that the world has to battle. And in Guyana, the government every day is engaged in a battle against disinformation by many people who call themselves reporters. I saw an interview with this David Hines. They were leading him on to be racist in his pronouncements, the reporters. It was a vile interview. So we're not going to be apologetic for fighting for what we believe in. And we believe in a free country, but we're not going to allow these few people to mislead the Guyanese public. Now, I want to address some of the issues that we're working on now. Many of you know that we promised to establish a development bank. We said we want to make loans to small and medium scale businesses to allow the growth of these businesses or the establishment and growth of these businesses in many areas. This came out of the survey we had and the informal conversations we've had over the 5 years we've been in government, where a number of Guyanese across all 10 regions of Guyana have great business ideas. Many started a business, but they can't either grow the business or get the idea translated into a business because of the lack of financing. Many of them do not have the collateral. Many are women, many of them are young people, and we made it clear we want to create an environment where young people, women, and all Guyanese for that matter, can take or make use of the opportunities in Guyana to create income for themselves and their families and to grow their wealth. And we believe a good starting point would be to ensure that these companies have access to capital. We will ensure that the formal banking system is reformed in a way that they can have easier access to capital and at greater magnitudes. We will work with the banking system to develop a range of instruments from discounting trade invoices to project financing to commercial bank financing that would allow Guyanese to better use the banking system to support their business needs. And we will also, as promised, create this development bank for the group of people who may not have access to the commercial banks so that they too can realize the benefits and opportunities of our country. So we've already started work on the concept paper. Next week we'll be discussing it further. We want an early budget next year where we will be putting part of the financing to start the bank in the budget. We hope that before the end of next year that this bank will be fully established and functional, that the seed capital would be put in, and all the parameters for on lending these resources would have been in place and met so that we can start delivering on this promise very early in the new term. A lot of work has already been done in developing the concept. As I said before, next week we're meeting to have a discussion on the second draft of the concept. We already have clear, we've given the people who are working on this, these concept papers, clear indications of what our intentions are, and we want to make sure that those are reflected in the final concept document before we proceed to implement. And so that is very important to us. We spoke about the expansion of fintech. Already work has started in this regard. President Modi, Prime Minister Modi made some promises when he was here to work with us. India has great experience in this field, but we have to define now all that we want to achieve in Guyana, how we expect the system to grow, and then either customize an existing software or develop an entirely new one, and with all of the enabling environment to allow this to happen so that people can conduct business of a financial nature with less transaction costs, and that financial products would be available to Guyanese wherever they live. This is something that we have looked at even in the hinterland and many other places. So work has started on that aspect of the financial sector reform that we promised to. We promise an aggressive central bank that would allow us to deliver on the enhanced environment for the growth of the financial sector. Now, in that regard, the President made some announcements earlier this week as to the foreign exchange market. Now, let me make it clear. We've always maintained throughout the campaign and for the several years that we've been in government, that our capacity to manage the financial sector, and capacity doesn't mean just the technical capability, but the funds to inject in the market, should we need to do so, is all available to us, and there's no shortage of fund. So right now, based on, although we've injected $1.2 billion into the market so far this year, we can inject significantly more funds because the government has the capacity to do so. That capacity will only grow in future years, given the large revenue that will flow to the Treasury from the NRF. And if you look at the projections for that revenue, it runs into billions of dollars into the future, and that is in foreign currency. Now, it's very clear that the demand has grown because our country has expanded or is expanding at a rapid pace. And we're in a major period where we are building out the infrastructure that would last us for decades into the future. And a lot of this infrastructure is financed from the local market through the local banking system, and we are providing the foreign currency for that investment. So take, for example, although the bridge, we have a loan for the Demerara Bridge, we are financing over $100 million US here through the Treasury. So not only do we have to provide the G dollars, but you have to provide 100 million US of foreign exchange for that bridge. We have been financing most of the gas to energy projects so far. Hundreds of millions of US dollars we've been finding from the local market to finance that. A lot of the local companies, in the past, they would go and take a loan from abroad, and they would then finance an investment. In the current situation, many of them are taking local loans, and they're buying factories or equipment, and therefore you have to find the foreign currency for that. So we've seen a major growth in the demand for foreign currency, and this is for capital investment. A lot of those investments are not going to go on forever. The demand for those will fall off when the project comes to an end. They're not recurrent in nature. So we can see in the future as a significant reduction in the demand for major capital projects once those are completed. There'll be new ones, but this is, if you look at the demand profile, that would lead to a reduction in the demand profile. Secondly, if you look to the future again, you will see that when the gas, the energy project comes on stream, that will reduce our import of fuel significantly. When we start supplying cooking gas to our population, that would also reduce the demand for foreign currency to import cooking gas. Combined, we can reduce about $450 million to $500 million a year, nearly $500 million in reduction in demand. Not only reduction in demand for capital items, but reduction in demand because we don't have to import those in the future. So if you look to the future, we have a growing revenue stream in foreign currency, and we'd have a reduction in demand for some of these projects that are ongoing now, and for import of fuel, basically, energy. So I think we're in a great position today to address any growth in demand for foreign currency in the future. We've made this very clear. So there is no crisis in the foreign currency market. Number two, there is no capital flight of a major nature from Guyana. If you look at the inflows on the balance of payment, you will see that this is the place where people want to bring their money to, because the return on their investment in Guyana is substantially higher than they can get in many parts of the world. And we've seen massive capital inflows into Guyana. So it is not a major, I saw some of the opposition people talking about capital flight from Guyana. That's nonsense. Nonsense. If you just look at the BOP, you will see what I mean. But we do have, in all that I've said, we do have people now who are abusing the system. And what the president announced was the intention of cracking down on those, particularly non-Guyanese investors, and some are not even investors, who are coming into our foreign currency market to utilize foreign exchange from Guyana to meet their demand elsewhere in other countries. And we have a significant evidence of this happening in countries where they have exchange control regimes and we have a free floating exchange rate regime where people can buy and sell as much currency as they wish. So some of the measures announced by the president would have to be seen in that light. We're not going to restrict Guyanese from purchasing foreign currency. In fact, we will make sure that we provide adequate amounts from the central bank to meet domestic demand. But we're going to try to close the loopholes on some of those who have been abusing the system. So when you see the need to submit invoices now, it is not to make the system more onerous on Guyanese, because there will be significant exemptions for small people. They don't have to, if you go for your small business, you wouldn't have to go through that rigid system of submitting all the invoices to show that the invoices match the demand. It would be mainly for the larger users of foreign currency, because we believe it's siphoned off there and then sold to other people who are non-Guyanese to meet their demand elsewhere, or to meet demand that is not captured by the GRA, that is generated from these foreign entities in Guyana. For example, the Chinese supermarket that you're seeing with. Most of these supermarkets don't have a bank account. They don't have a bank account. The owners don't have a bank account. And they're importing a lot of goods to sell in their supermarkets. How are they getting the foreign currency? So closing these loopholes would allow us to collect more taxes from these foreign entities, mainly, who are operating here, or if they are using our foreign currency on credit card to meet demand in another country. I'm not going to call any country's name today, but you know who I'm talking about. And this is happening. So I want everyone, the business community in Guyana, to understand that this is not about a crackdown on the local use of currency or anything of the sort. As the president made it clear, the system can clear, we have the capacity to intervene. We want to make sure that it's done in an orderly way. There'd be significant exemptions for small business, particular local business. We're not going to require, if people take in currency overseas, the law already says if it's over $10,000, you have to declare it. It's not changing any of those, the law, but there will be a greater focus on the foreign currency market. I just wanted to say that to people because we're examining it. On housing, we made a promise in the elections that we want to do 40,000, or we'll try to get 40,000 houses built in 5 years. That runs into hundreds of billions of dollars. It requires building 8,000 houses per year, which is a large number. And so the government has already started working at ensuring that we have a system in place that we'll put in place towards the end of this year, early next year, that can generate the construction of large number of houses swiftly whilst maintaining standards, and getting them to stay within the costs that we award them for. So that's the first thing that we are working on that will be rolled out early next year. Secondly, you would see an ad go out shortly where we will be now doing a survey in all of the regions about people who need help in constructing, because we made a promise that we'd assist people who are going to construct new homes. If they're poor, if they're low income level and they need help, they would get the help. And so we will now do a database of all of those people across all the 10 regions of Guyana, including in the Amerindian communities, so that we can, as soon as we roll the program out in the budget next year, that they can start receiving help so they may get, a grant to assist them with the construction. Not to construct the full home, but as we said, assist with the construction. And then also for poor families, home improvement grants. So for example, if they have, a leaky roof or anything like that, they can get help from the government to do that. So we are working at rolling this out in the new budget in next year. In terms of what we found for the 5 years in government, Social Security, people who are eligible for help on the public assistance, the complaint has been that many of them, through the Board of Guardians, can't get onto the database because they're excluded by the Board of Guardians for reasons that are not objective. And so clearly we have to reform the system, and the system is currently being reformed. So if you are a single parent and you're a low-income single parent, then you should be able to qualify for benefits once you meet certain metrics. And those metrics would be clearly identified and then implemented. So it's either you meet the metrics or not, right? You qualify under those metrics. And once that is done, then the people who are implementing the system can't then capriciously say, you're eligible and you're not eligible, based on their own, maybe, prejudices. Because a lot of people complain that the Board of Guardians, they don't like me, we have a family dispute, that's why they didn't put me on the list. The people say they can only take 5 a week, and you have 100 persons, who are eligible right now, so it's very slow. So we're devising a comprehensive system that would assist people. So if you're disabled, then automatically you should be on the system. You shouldn't have to run around and somebody in some region telling you you can't get on the list because they can only put limited numbers on this list. So what I'm conveying is that work is being done on improving this system so that we can roll out a system next year that would allow people to get benefits faster, and those who are eligible to be able to get onto the database swiftly on the basis of some existing criteria through which they would be qualifying. So I want to say to people, work is being done on that too, because that was one of the big complaints we had. We are also going to be in the new budget looking at ways how we support daycare centers throughout Guyana, because this is a promise we made, and we want to see how we can support the creation, the establishment of daycare centers in communities to support working mothers particularly. And whether we do it through a taxation system, we co-invest, or we give a grant, or we give a voucher, we are still examining which of these methods we'd be using to support this promise that we made in the elections. We're looking at things like tint permits. Now, everyone wants an exemption. So we now have to move to establish systems back in place. We may just have two levels, one for security forces and maybe diplomats or something like that, and then another tint level, which would be maybe a little higher than what exists now. And those are the two levels. And everybody, there's no exemption. So you can't run down and minister every day for an exemption permit. The permit occupies too much of our time, and it's better to do across the board systems. So there are a lot of these things that we're working on now that will hopefully improve the way that the government functions, and you can spend more time doing work that matters to people and their lives, rather than be running down a minister bogged down with 50 or 500 applications for waiving the tint permit every week going into the ministry. The same thing with gun licenses. We're looking at a system that would allow people some way of protecting themselves and their families, but at the same time don't give out 50,000 guns that people have applied for. We have application for between 30 to 50,000 applications in. So, and that is a big source of dissatisfaction. When you go out, a lot of people complain about it, oh, my application is in there. So this sort of thing, the movement and I'm saying this here because I'm hoping that it would stimulate a conversation nationally about these matters too, how we can improve the system and also so help people. I can go on because there are many other things we're working on here, like that will focus a lot on the efficiency of the government and fulfilling our mandate, almost in every sector. The gas to energy project we've resumed, we've started looking at that. The roads, some of these roads that are disruptive to people, we're looking at the early completion date. There'd still be some disruptions, for example, where we have to move utility poles to build out roads. This is being very disruptive. It would continue to disrupt people's lives until the roads are completed. That's why we have to make sure that the roads are completed swiftly once the utility poles are moved off or transferred over. There are lots of those things. But I can assure you that since election day, the day after, we've started working on a lot of the things that we promised. We're not the other parties that are just walking around the place looking for a photo op or anything, or to get relevance in the newspaper. As I said before, the elections are done. A lot of people keep asking me, when are the small contracts coming out? When are you going to start? You spoke a lot about the drainage, like concrete drains and concrete roads and those things. Well, the new budget, we're working on an early budget, so we'd have funds in the next year to start all of those projects in the city, across the country. We're going to resume a lot of that work, road building and the concrete drains and the electricity lights. The lights are now coming in. 96,000 lights would arrive here, hopefully before the end of the year. which are already purchased, so that those would be installed in communities. A lot of work is being done. On the job creation front, we are looking at expanding investment in many other sectors of the economy so that more people would have jobs. The education agenda, I just saw the president going through with a group looking at the digital school online. The discussion was ongoing when I left there a few minutes ago. So what I wanted to say today is that although you don't see us much, a lot is being worked on behind the scenes to ensure that we have the agenda fulfilled in the next 5 years. And as I said before, the elections are going to be in 2031. So that's when we'd have to account for all of these promises. Thank you. Yes. Yes, go on. Yeah. Hmm. I'm not hearing you. Yeah.
Yes. Dennis Gibraltar, Mr. Jagdeo, could you say to what extent, what is the status of the Curlew midstream bulk oil storage facility that was announced earlier this year? How much did the PEP spend in its election campaign? And thirdly, how much seed capital will be put into the development bank, and how will it be sustainable if it's going to be interest-free? Because that's what we were told initially that it will be interest-free.
Yeah. So we're thinking about a seed capital of $200 million, but it would be put in phases. So the first year may be a smaller sum, but about 200 million, and then we'll assess the demand as we move from there. But the idea is 200 million US dollars.
All from the government?
Yes, from the government. From the government. It's strange that you are now asking me, as General Secretary of the party, how much we spend on an election campaign. And you published a story several weeks ago, and now the whole world, for 2 weeks of think that we spent $5 billion. I'd like to ask you, where did you get the $5 billion from that we spent? And how did you come up with 5? Where did you get that figure from, Dennis?
Well, I'm not here to answer your question, sir.
No, yeah, well, exactly. You see, so you can publish anything you wish, and I can't ask you where you got that figure from.
I wouldn't disclose my source, sir.
Yes, you wouldn't disclose. So that's what people do. You hide behind sources. If I were to come here every time and hide behind a source, then we'd never find the truth. You could publish a blatant lie like that and say you can't disclose your source. This is a blatant lie. I will make known the figure later, but I would love if you tell the country how you came up with $5 billion. $5 billion is probably, we didn't spend much more than APNU. So let that be your guide. We didn't spend much more than the $300 million that APNU spent.
Including the advantage of incumbency and the use of those resources?
$300 million. That's something totally different. Now you're at me including the incumbency.
And that was also referenced in the story.
So The thing is that you are, so this is a clever way of misguiding people, misleading. So you just ask me how much we spent. You put a figure that the PPP spent $5 billion on an election campaign. You can't tell me what the source is because it's protected sources. I just told you we spent approximately just more than what APNU spent, but not in greater magnitude. Now you're coming in with, the advantage of incumbency. But the advantage of incumbency is there for everyone. So it was there for APNU when they were in government. When Granger went with the helicopter everywhere and flew around, and Ramjatan said, there's an advantage to incumbency. Why are you complaining? You expect the president to walk? So now we have to cost that. It wasn't costed then. The media, belaboring the point about access to media houses and stuff like that. The government dominating the government-owned or public sector media. Did that disadvantage? How much do you think that cost? $10 billion? We launched a digital campaign because the newspapers are now reaching anyone. We didn't advertise in the newspapers much. Nobody reads the newspapers. And our digital campaign cost us unbelievably low sum. We spent less on our digital campaign and our total advertising budget now, this time around in 2025, than we did in 2020. Because 2020 we focused heavily on the newspapers, because the newspapers their prices are very high. But it is just a blatant lie. A blatant lie. And it passes off just like that. How do you expect us to react? If the president gets angry with a story like that, is it because he's hostile to the media? It's not hostile. Should we just sit down and accept it as a fact when it's a lie? This is the problem we're talking about. And that's what earlier I said. Starbuck News was the one pushing the minority government. Now we won with a whopping majority, and they're now saying, oh, we didn't reach expectation. We didn't reach up to the 2/3 expectation. We never said 2/3. So make it seem as though we had set ourselves a target of 2/3 and we didn't reach it. We failed. This is what I'm doing. Curlew, the last I know of it was we were at a stage where we were negotiating. There were some major differences in the terms of the deal. We could not conclude the deal before the elections, and then we put it on pause. We have to re-engage with Curlew and others to ensure that the objectives are met. And we'll only sign up to an agreement that protects Guyana in the long term, but that yields significant short-term benefits to our country. And what we were seeking to do was through procurement in bulk through Curlew, and then a tank farm in Guyana, so you can store more fuel here to cut the price of procurement of fuel between 20% to about 35%. And that's entirely doable. If we can do that, although we have the lowest gasoline and diesel price in the Caribbean because of the government subsidy, we can get that price even further down. Significantly down. because we'd be able to procure our fuel cheaper. And that is the essence of the deal. If that an agreement doesn't deliver that, that is the benefit to us through lower procurement costs and protects us in the long run, we're not going to sign it. So we have our lawyers working on this, and we're not going to be very convenient to sign things today that will harm our country 10 years from now, 20 years from now. I mean, we're not going to be rushed into signing any agreement. You saw what APNU did with the 2016 PSA. They were advised not to sign it overnight. Truckman went and signed it. We're stuck with the consequences of it up to today. So that's where we are with Curlew. We would do all of the due diligence and we'd make sure that the agreement, when concluded, and if we can conclude it, protects the people of Guyana.
Mr. Jagdeo, on the element of the development bank, you did not answer the question about how do you ensure sustainability if the resources that will be dispersed will be interest-free?
Yes, so the thing is that we anticipate, we've looked at the models around the world, like the Grameen Bank and stuff. These are micro loans, and they had a higher repayment rate than even commercial banks in some countries. So definitely you're going to have some, maybe a percentage of the loans that will go bad. This is realistically speaking. But we anticipate that if you work with the businesses themselves in a hand-holding fashion, that you'd be able to get the loan repaid and the money can be revolved. You know, the money can go into a revolving fund. And then with periodic injections from the government over period, as your revenue grows, you can periodically inject more capital into the bank. So access to the financing comes with the software that I mentioned before the elections. That is the party and the government working to ensure that we do a lot of training, financial literacy training, hand-holding through mentorship, working to make sure that each of these companies that would access a loan have technical advice, marketing advice. So it comes as a package deal. So you will be able to ensure, you would know immediately whether this is a viable project or not if you go through that whole process. I think it would do well. But definitely, like in every system, you'd have maybe a 10% failure rate. It happens globally.
Kiana Wilberg for Starting Point. Dr. Jagdeo, you spoke about how the government intends to leverage a portion of the oil resources to back the development bank.
Yeah.
And you also spoke about the housing sector, 40,000 homes, and reaching out to those members of the public who may be facing constraint with construction. I wanted to talk a little bit about how the government, and if my interpretation of this is correct, the government using these particular strategies as means of transferring the wealth from the oil sector as opposed to direct cash transfers on a frequent basis. And what are the pros and cons of that approach?
So over the last few days, I saw this injustice that was done to Minister Vikram Bharat, where the focus was that he said something to the effect that cash transfers are a failed model. And then a number of hostile forces to us extended the meaning of that to mean that to create the interpretation that we are backing away from all the commitments we made in the election period and before the election period. So the model for development of our families, individuals, that is Guyanese, families or a country, does not focus only on cash transfer. Cash transfer is not a model. Cash transfer is one element of the model. We made it clear that we want to invest in every Guyanese through higher education spending and through greater opportunities to our people to have a high quality education. Every single one of them. From the child that starts at kindergarten all the way to university. And you've seen the government invest in this vision, in this sector significantly. 53 billion to 185 billion in the last term. We have moved to do a number of things. Pay for exams, made university education free, more scholarships, all of these will continue. We're going to give parents more choices in these next 5 years. The digital school, upgrading the curriculum using AI, ensuring that we can personalize the curriculum for individual kids based on their aptitude at different ages, because that changes. A lot of that work is being done now. We're going to continue ensuring that we pay for scholarships for people. We're going to be assisting families now with the transportation grant and other things. School feeding programs, enhancing the quality of it. All of these things we promised. That's one element of the model. If you can invest in people through education, then you can ensure long-term sustainability. The oil resources will disappear, but good education can only create more value in the future. It's up to people now to make use of these opportunities. So instead of the opposition talking all day about cash grant alone, they should be saying, please make sure that you study. Use the opportunities provided by the government of Guyana fully. Or go to university, ensure you're trained, get a skill. Go ensure that you are familiar with artificial intelligence. That would be a constructive opposition. Now all day they focus on cash grant as the model, when it's not the model. That's the first element of the model. The second element is healthy people. Educated people, healthy people. Massive investments, again, in healthcare across the country. I'm not going to repeat all of the initiatives that we're working on. The third element is jobs, getting good jobs and higher paying jobs for people, and allowing people to keep more money in their pockets. So that means having a positive investment for climate for investments. Making sure that the taxation system evolves in a way that rewards hard work by allowing people to keep more money in their pockets, as we said. Lowering, so those are the two elements of it, which is what we're working on. That's a third element of the model. Because if you have good education, you're healthy, you need a good job that you can earn. You need to get more money to save or to meet your family need. The third element is ownership. home ownership, which is what we're promoting. That's the fourth element, rather. The fourth element of the model is home ownership. Ownership of other things, like a vehicle. That's why we want to reduce the taxes. Home ownership will assist you to build homes. We would invest in homes through the government itself, and then, bring in, ensure, like what we've done in the past, people get a mortgage, and then they pay back for their homes, because the seed capital comes from the government. That's the fourth element of it. Then we have more transfers to people. The transfers will take place in the form of higher pension, more money for the children through the cash grant, public assistance, helping people with disability, helping single parents, and also the cash transfer from the oil and gas sector. That's just one element, a small element of the model. Ensuring people have more recreational facilities, live in nicer communities, and with better roads. They are secure. That's another element of the model. That's why these security cameras. Those are the key elements of the model that we are talking about. They only focus on cash grant because they know some people only want the money. They only want the money, and we are not into that. So every commitment we made in relation to the cash grant, we will keep. We haven't withdrawn any commitment, notwithstanding what they said, Minister Vikram said. But the model of development for Guyanese and our households and our country is not cash grant model. It's a different model with various elements that will change people's lives for the better. That is the model the PPP and the government are pushing.
Dr. Jagdeo, just to
Yes.
the second question. The president this morning at GCCI event spoke extensively about two particular things. One, the government leveraging data centers and Guyana becoming this data hub for the Caribbean. What sort of revenue stream or revenue opportunity are you looking to tap by keeping your eyes focused on this particular avenue? And secondly, the president also spoke about the need to work with the private sector to bring crude marketing services at home. How much savings are you looking to tap where that is concerned? Why can you underscore the importance of that particular approach?
So when the president speaks to the different audiences that he often addresses, he is selling a vision. And the government cannot do all of these things, because what the government is doing is creating an enabling regime for these things to happen. If you look at our manifesto, we speak about the enabling regime. So we can, through co-investment, through lower taxation, through skill training, through probably some other measures that maybe infrastructure investment, we can then encourage the private sector to invest in these areas, because these are areas that will generate sustainable income in the future. And remember, we're speaking about a diversified economy. We're speaking about identifying new growth poles for the income of the future and the jobs of the future. So we don't want all of our eggs in the oil and gas basket. So when the president speaks about data center, he's just tapping into a trend globally where countries are competing now to have data centers in their country, particularly energy-rich countries, because it brings them significant advantages. And in the digital world. And so we don't want to be excluded here in Guyana. So who best to pick this up? It's the private sector that has to run with these ideas, but he wants them to know that his government is receptive to supporting investments in these areas. Similarly, when he spoke about the training of people to trade our crude, but in many cases, a lot of the private sector entities, local entities, in some parts of the world, so you have like in UAE, ADNOC and others who trade the crude, and they have great deal of capacity to do that because they study crude market and they have expertise in crude market. We don't have that as yet. So we have opted for a very transparent mechanism where we have public tenders out and people bid on marketing our crude for 1 year duration contracts. And that's how we've operated in the 5 years. And it's transparent. And the one that gives you the company that is, of course, pre-qualified and have good standing, that gives you the highest return, that's the one you take. And we have done that, and we have kept away from scandal. But we may be able to get a premium if we trade our own crude. And so we are going to start developing our domestic capacity to trade crude, but it requires knowledge of the market, and that is a team of technical people who are very aware of this very complicated crude market. And it's very, very complicated market out there. So he has signaled that we are moving in that direction. It's not going to happen tomorrow because we don't have that capacity. But the private sector itself may be able to develop some capacity there. So they can, maybe they can sell services to the government in this regard, technical expertise in that area. So when you listen to their speeches, they're not about what the government is doing itself. Because in Guyana, every time the government speaks, people think, oh, they're investing in that. The government has a role as an enabler of investments too. And that is what we've been pushing. Yes.
Marcel Thomas, the Starbrook News. I just wanted a clarification on one thing and then two questions. On the gun license, was it hypothetical? You're saying that you don't want it to have a backlog of 30 to 50,000
No,
or there is 30 to 50,000 applications?
So right now, that is, from what I'm told, I thought it's 30,000. I just left the meeting and they told me it's much more. And so those are people who've applied for a license already. Now just imagine if you have to give out 50,000 gun licenses in Guyana. What could happen? And often the weapons end up in the hands of criminals because they come into a home and they take the weapons, etc. So we do have to think about how we can give people some way of protecting themselves, but maybe a non-lethal way of protecting, and be very liberal with that and be very sparing with the gun licenses. But let the system be transparent so that you don't have to go, people don't have claims they have to pay somebody for a gun license, or they have to, every day they're running you down wherever you go. I want an upgrade on my gun, I want this. That dominates sometimes half of the time you spend in community meetings. After the meetings, people come and they talk about their gun licenses. And so you can't get to the real issue of, development and education and health and all of that. So, and I know it bothers a lot of people, and a lot of people complain too because they've been waiting for many, many years. So we have to find a way of addressing this, and the president is looking into it. Personally, he's looking into this matter to devise a system that would allow us to be responsive to people, but without putting 50,000 guns in the hands of people. So those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. So for example, when people are denied access to the public assistance and they have a visible sign of disability, it's clearly, something is clear to me that the Board of Guardians who deny that person, they're just messing around. And often the people, they don't have recourse to anyone else, so they have to wait until the president goes to a community. Like I remember once, the president went to Essequibo Coast, and there was a young guy, visibly disabled. And the president said, put him on the public assistance. He complained to the president, couldn't get on. Several months later, I went to the charity, and he was not. So I called, and they were saying, oh, he had to go back through, imagine, he had to go back through the local Board of Guardians. And I used some expletives, but that's the kind of thing. It shouldn't have to await the president or a minister going to a community to solve that problem. They should have immediately, if you can't get past the local Board of Guardians, the appeal board must be, people have recourse to an appeal board. And the appeal board doesn't report to the PS or the minister, directly to the president, sends a report once every quarter to the president. That we've had 500 appeals, we've gone through it, we've examined it carefully, the people met all the metrics, and we have approved 200 and we have denied the 300. Because, sometimes everyone wants to get onto the public assistance. So that sort of system, when you put that in place, people have recourse, and they don't have to wait until you go to a community. When you go to community meetings, you see a long line and waiting to see the president or someone else. And often it's these problems. We're hoping, like the NIS one, people who have contributions over 500 will get their payoff, but didn't make 750 because we set aside 10 billion. Not many people have utilized it as yet. We hope they would now utilize it. They will get their one-off grant, a substantial grant, I must say, and they would receive something. And that we have a system to quickly identify and pay out benefits to those who are above the 250. And then the NIS pension, which hadn't been increased significantly in the last term, the old age pension was increased. We double old age pension in the last term. We promised to increase NIS pension. And so NIS can't do that on its own. NIS is not government. The money is not government money. So we promised to make injections from the Treasury into the NIS so they can increase their NIS pension. So in the budget, you will see some money put in the budget to be given to the NIS so they can then start implementing that promise that we made. So this is how we'll approach some of these matters.
My substantive questions. One, same cash grant, but
Yes.
it's the announcement during the campaign where the president had said that government was mulling a second cash grant possibly before Christmas. My question is, has this been decided on as yet? Has a concretized decision been made? Will there be a cash grant before Christmas?
Whatever the president said on the campaign trail will be done. Whatever the president said on the campaign trail would be done. We are a party. Once we say things, we get it done. We're very tight with making promises, but once we say it, it will be done. Whatever the president said on the campaign trail, he said he was mulling it. I'm glad you said he was mulling it. He didn't say, like on the other things, there shall be but he said, I'm mulling it. But there will be, and this is a 5-year term we have. There'll be several cash grants in the 5 years. So don't worry about it. There are 5 years term. This is not a 3 months term that we have. We haven't even started the 5 years as yet.
No, but he said mulling before Christmas.
Mulling, yes,
I'm
mulling.
asking.
He's
If a
mulling,
deci-
yeah.
As a decision been
Yeah,
made on the
but the
Christmas.
thing is that whatever the president said, I told you, will be delivered. But the thing is that we're not in for 3 months in office. We're in office till 2031.
Yeah, we know that, but you haven't said yes or no.
Yeah, no. But I just told you whatever the president said. The president is a man of his word. All right, when Marcel is done. Marcel has the microphone.
And the president, he made a brief announcement this morning that there will be enhancements to the current stock exchange. We don't even really have a stock exchange to speak, just basically trading in shares, and that there'll be a junior stock exchange. I wanted you to give a bit more insight into this and how this is going to be done and the purpose.
So the stock exchange in Guyana is private. It's a privately owned stock exchange, like New York Stock Exchange. So many people do not know that. The Securities Council, the regulatory body, is appointed by the government, but the exchange is private. So a lot of people, to list on the exchange, there is a fee, like anywhere in the world. So you'd recall one time, Banks DIH, Mr. Rees mentioned about the stock exchange not working. And then the stock exchange said, they're not listed. Banks is not even listed because they have to pay a fee. So to get an exchange working, the government can put in place the regulatory regime. We have a long time now we passed the Securities Exchange Act. We can have in place the council as we have. But to get volumes traded through the exchange, you have to have the companies, the public companies, listing on the exchange. So that means getting more companies to go public, because the majority of our companies are private companies, and that's private in the sense of the number of shareholders that they have, and many of them do not want to list on the exchange. So the only way we could get an exchange that is very vibrant is if you get more companies to go public and to then pay a fee to get listed on the exchange. Another way of doing this is to have some government instruments traded on the exchange. So we had already indicated that we may want to siphon off from the oil and gas sector some of the most lucrative opportunities that we see on the right year return for those the investors in those companies, create the share structure of the companies, and then maybe if we want volume to be traded, list those on the exchange. So what I mean, for example, take the fertilizer plant that we want to do. After we complete the energy project, there'd be a second energy project there, and then a fertilizer plant. We put that in a company. We create a share structure and allow Guyanese to buy shares in that company, maybe limited to say 100 shares per person, because you want to have more people own shares. So teachers, fishermen, nurses, everybody can own shares. You guarantee a 10% return on those shares, which is unusual because normally it's based on the performance of the company. But to give a sweetener, the government can underwrite it. And then have those shares listed on the exchange, the company listed on the exchange, so that people can then sell. So if you buy 100 shares at $10 each, $1,000, and then you get on the exchange, you list it, and another person wants to buy it. But we have to look at concentration, because one person may want to buy out all the shares. But if you're getting, say, $500 per share, you're going to get a significant amount of money. You're going to get, what, 500,000 now? From a $1,000 investment, right? So that kind of thing. That's the way it would work. Because a lot of these exchanges, you can put the regulatory system in place, but a lot of depends on the people who use the exchange. And a lot of the private companies in Guyana don't want to use the exchange, because going public means they have to publish every few months. They have to publish their records. You know, you have audited statements and all of that. And then some people don't want that type of scrutiny. So we can put in place again. And so I think when the president spoke of this, he was hoping that the private sector would also make full use of the opportunity. We are prepared to address any regulatory matter that would enable this to happen. We are prepared to create the incentive for this to happen. But then it's up to the private sector to make use of it. And a lot of them lament that they can't get loans or because they're stretched to the limit. But this is one way of raising capital outside of going to the formal banking system. You can raise capital either through a loan or getting equity, you know, like trading shares in the company. So I think that was the idea.
Mr. Jagdeo,
Yes.
follow up on the cash grant question. One of the things that is being said in the public domain is that the cash grant will no longer be per person, but will be per household.
Who said this?
That is what many members of the public are saying.
No, but many members of the public don't determine. This is
No,
again.
that's what I'm asking.
Let me tell you how something like that starts. A useless partisan goes on a program like with Globespan and other useless show that was talking about PPP minority government, and he says this is what the government is contemplating doing. Never spoke with a single individual in the government. Can spread a rumor just like that, and then that's how it comes out. The media now find out people are thinking about household. There's been no such discussion at any level in the government. So it's a blatant lie, but this is what happens all the time, is disinformation. Every day it's deliberate, and people don't have anything to do. Like some of these people who are, like, what else would a partisan do now? What else would a partisan, or I don't know who the others, they're just like a David Hines, except spread rumors. They have nothing productive to say. This is a blatant lie. We've never made no such decision.
On the question of rice and paddy prices, will government consider buying the paddy and or the rice at a higher price and providing that rice, because it's surplus, to, say, Haiti, where there is a grave humanitarian crisis with food supply? And secondly, sir, does the government support the destruction of these allegedly cocaine-laden boats that are moving from Venezuela.
What kind of boat?
Drug-laden boats. The United States has destroyed at least 3 such boats in the last few weeks.
Well.
Does government support this kind of action?
I don't think the United States government, when they destroy these boats, seek to get Todd or Omar, the chief of staff, to seek permission to do it. The United States of America has defined its policy on drug dealing. They have made it the centerpiece of their border policy. It's not new. President Trump, before he became president in the campaign, said the countries that support drug dealing or that support the trafficking of drugs or the movement in drugs through their borders will face enhanced scrutiny. I recall as soon as they got into office, the new government, they had this engagement with Mexico. They put a lot of restrictive measures against Mexico, including a tariff, a huge tariff. They had engagements with the president of Mexico, and they work out an arrangement to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States from the Mexican border. The same thing was done with Canada. Now, the United States has said Venezuela is a major source country for drugs leaving this hemisphere and going into the United States of America. They've said that they will destroy any drugs that they've defined a policy as to how they will fight that. That's a matter for the United States of America and Venezuela. They don't need our support for their drug enforcement or policies. That's like me commenting if Kenya does something with Tanzania, and I'm asked about whether I support it in Guyana. I know, why would I be getting into their business? When you ask us whether we what are our policies in Guyana, then I can explain to you about that. But we have no. That's their stated policy globally, the U.S. policy.
But I was trying to look at it from the perspective of human rights, the killing of people who, without any trial or anything like that, and it's happening in the Caribbean waters with a heavy military buildup, which the Caribbean is being defined as, well, there's a stated objective by the region of which Guyana is a part, that should be a zone of peace. But we have a heavy military buildup.
Yeah.
Innocent people are being killed in the process of fighting drugs. So that's why I'm asking whether Guyana supports this in the context of this whole question of the region being a zone of peace.
No, the zone of peace, it's Venezuela that has been disrupting the region as a zone of peace. It's Venezuela that threatened to annex our country, a significant part of our country. Venezuela didn't know that would affect the climate of peace in the region. It's Venezuela that has threatened military action against Guyana several times. Venezuela that has been engaged in provocative action against Guyana, sending vessels into our waters. So the only people who are disrupting the peaceful coexistence of the countries in our region has been Venezuela, not Guyana.
And the matter of the purchasing of rice and paddy.
Oh, I know the Ministry of Agriculture has been examining this matter. Globally, a lot of rice has been dumped on the market, so the prices plummeted. That is why even when we were campaigning before the elections and when they had another issue associated with the intake of rice, we mentioned that there's in some communities we have to be able to build storage facility and drying facilities. If the farmers only have a window of 1 week from cutting the rice, the paddy, to selling it, after which it goes bad, they are subjected to the capacity for intake of that rice. So if the millers have limited capacity to take in all of that paddy, then the paddy could spoil. So for example, if one miller said to me, I can only take 10,000 bags in a day, but there had 28,000 bags being cut per day in that region. So what will happen with the other 18,000 bags? You have to find other people who can take the rice in within this short window from the time the paddy, from the time it's cut to the time it spoils. So that's one thing. Two is that the farmers have no bargaining power because they have to sell the paddy in this short window and they have to conclude an agreement at that point in time. So one way of supporting the farmers is to ensure that you have adequate intake so that they don't suffer spoilage. And two, that they have a longer period in which they can own the paddy so they can negotiate for higher prices. And that, the only way that can happen is if the government invests in drying and storage facilities for the farmers. And so we made a commitment that we will be looking at that in the Essequibo Coast and some other areas where you have a lack of intake capacity and drying facility. And that's one way of addressing, it's a systemic way of addressing this problem with paddy. Because right now, because of the new variety we have and because of better weather and crop husbandry and all of that, we're getting massive output. Last year I think we produced the most paddy ever in our history. Well, I think this year too we're on a record-breaking sort of output. And so that's one end. On the other hand, we have to, on the demand side, we have to work globally to try to open up more markets. But remember, we are competing with rice production from other parts of the world. And two, how do we use our rice as an input into other manufacturing processes in Guyana? So it's something that we have to get our best technologists and scientists to start looking at creating a domestic demand for rice that would lead to an output where the rice forms an input into that output, but an output that has a fairly sizable market overseas. So these are some of the ways we have to address this. Of course, we have to continue to support the farmers with the drainage and irrigation, farm-to-market roads, sometimes assisting them with the pesticides and the fertilizer and the seed paddy, because it's tough work out there. So I know the Ministry of Agriculture, Minister Zulfikar Mustafa, has been looking into this matter. I was overseas, so I didn't look into the matter as yet, but hopefully this week we can have a discussion. I know he and the President have been discussing this issue about the collapse of prices.
Good afternoon. Kim King with Guyana Standard. Sir, could you explain the way forward regarding previous comments you've made about promoting greater value systems among the population. You've spoken previously about religious groups that came to you and you had suggested a potential civics curriculum that they should pull together. So what are the current concrete plans or actions that have been taken on this? And on the issue of the firearm license applications, do you expect that before you move to process this backlog, that you may want to work to strengthen current legislation regarding perhaps being more picky about who should have a gun license and the review process in light of ills such as what appears to be a current spike in killings of women by their intimate partners?
So all of those have to be taken into consideration. So that is why if you have a more discerning set of criteria, then you can apply those criteria in the screening process to determine who gets the firearm license and who doesn't get it. But it creates a lot of dissatisfaction. Everyone out there believes that they're entitled to it, and if they get refused, then they are offended. So you have to lower that expectation. Secondly, you have to remove this widespread complaint that, well, not so much complaint, but they feel that you can bribe someone to get a license. So if we can do exactly what you're saying, it's not going to happen over, like immediately you start giving out firearm licenses without looking at the entire system. That's why I told you the president himself is looking into this. So you look at strengthening the legislation, you look at a more discerning set of criteria, and then is it possible to be more liberal with licenses of a non-lethal nature, So that is where you can meet a lot of the demand by giving people a tool that they can use for protection as they claim, but it's not lethal.
Like what?
They have weapons that would stun you, but won't kill you. Right? That's what I mean. I don't want, this is President Forte. He is dealing with this directly. And so I'm hoping that by raising it here today too, that we have a discussion in the country. Because I recall at one time, when I was president, remember after the issue at Lusignan, when you had the killing of the young people, etc., by that criminal gang. And I went in the community and people were saying, like on a railway embankment we had a meeting at a school. I think Saint Sharma came in with a camera and people were saying, everybody should get a weapon. We should move to a system like the United States of America, where everyone could walk in a store once you're a citizen and you can buy a weapon. And a lot of the people in the community, it was split almost 60% of the people said, no, we don't want that to happen in Guyana. So although they wanted people to have weapons, but they did not want a system where everyone could get a weapon, because the same point some women got up and say, what if people are drunk and they use their firearm? There were fears that they would, use them in a domestic situation. And we've seen some really egregious examples of this happening in Guyana, some horrific cases. So the society now has to make a determination. This is a societal thing. What model do we adopt in Guyana? Should we adopt a model like the US? Or should we adopt, and I'm not sure, I'm sure that we wouldn't get support for that. Or do we adopt a model where people still can find some form of protection if they feel they need it, but it's non-lethal? I think this is the conversation we need to have as a country. But if we do that and then the system is in place, then you have a smoothly functioning system. Now everybody finding out they can get a weapon, somebody bribe someone and get a weapon, or they just, they don't go through a proper screening. I think we need to address this issue. And this is something we heard a lot about, and we intend to focus on it as a government. It has to be dealt with once and for all. And society has to deal with it. Our society, not just a government. Yes.
Okay. And I'm promoting the greater value systems that
yes. So this is something we believe in. We believe that we have to work with the religious community in this country to promote a better, more civic-mindedness among our people, and to be the support for many people who are going through bad times. And the religious organizations are well placed to assist in this regard. So in the communities, almost every community across our country, we have either a church, a temple, or mosque, or all of them in the single communities. You may not even have a government office there. So when the youngsters hanging out at the street corner, they're looking to get guidance. They're just young people hanging out and stuff like that. Often, the place where they get the counseling is from people who are trying to mislead them, take them down a path that is not productive for their lives. And these, since they have a localized presence, the religious leaders, and we know that they are positive in outlook, they should be the shoulder, the support for those young people. No suicide prevention, a whole range of things. They best know the communities. That's one. And two, for promoting love for country, for promoting the fight against racism, national unity. They're best placed within their congregations and, in these bodies to carry that message. I've seen some file cases where people who are living here unpatriotic, supporting Venezuela. You don't have an option of throwing them out the country because they're Guyanese, but really sick people. And so I hope that before maybe the next September term, and hopefully long before then, that we will be able to get this civic education subject compulsory in this school, introduce it.
Has anyone agreed to work on that yet?
Yes, we are examining this right now. Everything that we promised, we're starting to examine this, and soon the consultation. And you know what? The next thing we have already heard from all the Muslims, the Hindus, and the Christians. They're strongly in support of measures to prevent gambling in communities. They believe that it's a social ill that's creating many problems with the family. That people go to these little places, their shops in their communities, and all day long, all they're thinking about is on the phone, some credit there to put in a bet. And even taking away money from the families. The children home, they need something. To eat or to buy clothing or something like that for the school. And they're busy out there doing this all the time. Something has to be done about it. And we intend to do something about it too. We intend to do something. We've heard strongly from these communities. It's changing the nature of many of those people. Some people don't even want to work. They live for that little credit on their phone to place a bet. I know some people in the public service, they do it too. And there goes. I see some smiles here, but you have to disincentivize it. People can't accumulate money if that. You're going to lose your money. If you gamble, you lose. Don't worry with people who say you win money there. You always lose in the long run. You always lose your money rather than investing it in your family or your future. And so those are, you asked me about the religious bodies, they've already signaled that to the government, their dissatisfaction with this, and they need to work on it. And we have already been, this is one of the things that we've found on the ground too, when talking to people. A lot of families are having huge problems because of this issue.
Okay, it's a bit late in the year. The government hasn't published a half-year report yet.
We just came out the election, so I'm not sure that Ashley will get around to that. But I think he's focused a lot now on preparing the budget for early budget.
Okay, thank you. And finally, could you comment on any potential implications for Guyana of the U.S. government shutdown? And secondly, how do you determine, as discussed in your opening statements, that a reporter is an opposition element or an illegitimate reporter?
Yeah, well, the thing is that for me, it is a pattern of behavior. I have seen people who will invent rumors. For example, Travis Chase invented a lot of stuff. I've seen people, I just spoke about, well, Dennis is not, I wouldn't say he's opposition, but how could you just invent something like that? That for me is a sign of unprofessional behavior. But I've seen some people who are lobbyists get paid by businessmen. They get paid by businessmen. They get paid by the Win campaign to carry positive views and to cuss the PPP all the time. Carry positive views. Look at the Win. The entire media corps, some Starbuck News and the others, they hid every dirty linen that they had. And it's going to come out soon. All of that will come out soon, very shortly, very soon. And so it's going to come out. But they hid it. And it is clear, and there is no, you tell me about Nazima Raghubir, who heads the what do you call it, press association.
She's no longer the president.
Oh, she's no longer, thank God, yeah. Thank God. But she never had anything, not a single positive thing to say about the government. Fabricates stories all the time. Imagine the Starbuck News complaining about being denied government ads. I pointed out, I gave the numbers. Kaichor News Chronicle had $206 million of ads in 2024. Kaichor News 202. Starbuck News 170 something million. And Guyana Times, I think, 150 something million. And they went and complained that they denied government ads, and that is suddenly part of an international report. That they denied government ads because of their position, independent position. Kaichor News got as much ads as the Chronicle. As much, over 200 million. Yeah, not a single positive thing to say about the government in all the years. But they got the ads and they lie to the international media, and then the international bodies then repeat the lies. So it's clear as daylight. They're only deluding themselves. So right now, I think we should have the same standards too. The local bodies, maybe we should You see, it's all self-regulating here. In Guyana, we don't have like a body. If President Trump was here and he had to deal with historic news and some of the others, oh God, he'd call them fake news every day. Every day, some of the others would be fake news, pure fake news.
Okay, so on that, the president had said in his inauguration speech that you want to hold the media accountable. What exactly are those strategies that you as a government plan to use to do that? And what are the lines that you will not cross?
So clearly, we are going to expose them. This is what we have a voice to, and they want us not to speak about their transgressions, their lack of professionalism. They're being paid, they're political hitmen and hitwomen, that they're being paid by individuals. Some of them are political operatives working in media houses. They don't want us to speak about that. Anytime we expose that, we're assaulting the media. So we will continue exposing them for what they are, those individuals. Two, we will have to work internationally to point out all of these issues with the international organization. But you're never going to find a piece of legislation in Guyana which says that the government will throw a reporter in jail for what they write or what they say. Look at what the Kaichor News has for 15, 20 years made up every story that you could think of, the lies that they tell. And they survive. And you are from the Kaichor, you know that in the past, both of you, you know what I'm talking about. They got the most ads in 2024. We're still around, they cuss me every day, and they still get their ads. You don't see a single reporter from the Kaichor News not being allowed to a press conference or being harassed.
Okay, and finally, regarding the U.S. government shutdown.
Oh, the U.S. government shutdown, I think I've examined the areas where it will affect people. So in some areas, like it could affect maybe flights in the long run, because the people in the flight control operators have to work without pay. The Army have to work without pay in the US, so those are issues. And then I think the patent office, but we don't have many patents there. I think the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, so if we require any permit to export maybe some of our produce, it may affect some of those agencies. But I don't see anything major. I don't see any major impact on Guyana from the U.S. government shutdown.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much.